The market was alive with noise, filled with the sound of shouting, laughter, and cruel bargains. Cages stood in long rows, metal bars shining under the harsh lights. Inside them were living beings, some strong, some weak, but all broken in spirit. They were not seen as people here. They were seen as weight, as product, as meat. In one cage, a young woman sat with chains around her wrists. Her skin was pale under the grime, her eyes tired but still burning with a small flame. She had been moved from place to place, always treated as nothing more than an object. Now she was here, in the biggest alien marketplace of the sector. The auctioneer shouted her name, though it was not her real one. Only a tag. Lot 47. Strong bones. Good weight, he cried with pride. The crowd laughed, some clapped, some whistled. They did not see her as alive, they saw her as food. The auctioneer pulled her out of the cage. She stumbled on the stage, chains rattling against the floor. A scale weighted at the center, tall and cold. The crowd cheered as she was forced onto it. Numbers flashed, weight calculated, her body measured not for who she was but for how much meat she carried. The auctioneer's voice thundered again. 70 kilos! Who will bid? Hands shot up, voices called. 20 credits. 30. 40. Laughter followed as if it was a game. To them it was sport, to her it was death. The girl kept her eyes down. She did not cry, she did not beg. She had learned long ago that begging brought only more laughter. Inside, she felt empty, as if her spirit had already been carved away. Still a small thought whispered in her mind. Maybe someone would see her as more. But the crowd shouted higher bids, louder, crueler. A buyer joked, "She looks tender enough. Maybe we roast her today." The crowd roared with wicked delight. Her heart sank deeper. The auctioneer slammed his hand on the podium. Final offer. 50 credits. The cage masters grinned, expecting the deal to close. The girl closed her eyes, waiting for the end. But then, in the middle of the noise, a new voice spoke. It was not loud. It was not cruel. It was calm, steady, and human. "I'll pay 100 credits." The market froze. The laughter stopped for a moment. All eyes turned to the man who had spoken. He stood near the back, tall, his face hidden under a hood. A human, alone among aliens. His voice cut through the air again. "I'll take her home." The crowd burst into chaos. What? Why? Is he mad? Voices overlapped, some mocking, some angry, some curious. The auctioneer blinked, confused but tempted. 100 credits was double the highest bid. Still, he laughed nervously. "Sir, this one is for meat, not for keeping." The human's eyes met his, calm and unshaken. "I know what I said." The girl raised her head slowly, her tired eyes searching. She had seen only monsters in this place, buyers with greedy eyes, cruel mouths. But this man's voice carried no cruelty, no hunger. It carried something else, something she had not heard in years. It carried choice. It carried mercy. The auctioneer, seeing the credits offered, slammed the podium. "Sold!" To the strange human. The crowd exploded in noise. Some shouted in anger. Others laughed even louder. "Fool. Waste of credits. He buys meat to pet it." Their words cut the air, sharp and mocking. But the human did not react. He walked forward with slow, steady steps. The guards unlocked the chains from her cage and pushed her toward him. She stumbled, weak and afraid, but he caught her before. She fell. For the first time in years, a hand touched her without cruelty. The girl looked at him, voice shaking. Why did you buy me?" The human's eyes were tired, shadows of loneliness deep within them. But his voice was simple, quiet yet strong. "Because you don't deserve to die like meat." The crowd continued to laugh behind them. But for the girl, the world grew. Silent, she did not understand, she did not trust. But inside her chest, where hope had long died, a small spark returned. For the first time, she thought maybe her story was not ending. Maybe it was only beginning. And as the human led her away, past cages and chains, past laughter and jeers, The crowd's voices faded into the background. Her heart pounded with fear and confusion, yet also with something new. Suspense filled the air. Who was this man? Why did he save her? And what fate awaited her in the hands of a stranger? The market's gates closed behind them. The girl glanced once more at the cages, the faces of those still trapped. She wondered if she would ever return, or if this was her one chance at freedom. Her chains were still heavy, her body still weak, but in her heart, the words echoed again. "I'll take you home." The marketplace noise faded behind them, but the memory of it clung to her skin like dust. The girl walked beside the stranger, her steps slow, her chains still cold against her wrists. She could not understand what had just happened. For years she had known only cages, whips, and cruel laughter. Now a man had paid more than anyone else and taken her away. Not for meat, not for labor, but for something she could not name. She kept her eyes on the ground, afraid to look too long at him, afraid this was a trick. The human walked in silence, his long cloak brushing the dirt road, his steps calm and steady. His presence was heavy, yet strangely safe. Every time she stumbled, his hand was there to steady her, not to strike. The weight of that gentle touch confused her more than any chain ever had. They reached the edge of the city where ships and carts waited. The human led her to a small transport, worn with age but cared for. He opened the door and guided her inside. She sat stiffly on the bench, her body tense, ready for pain that did not come. He started the engine, the hum filling the silence between them. For a long while, neither spoke, the world outside blurring into shadow as the vehicle moved away. From the glowing towers, finally, her voice broke raw and thin. Why did you buy me?" The human's hands tightened slightly on the controls. He did not look at her at first, his eyes stayed on the road ahead. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "Because no one should be sold by weight. No one should be treated like that." She blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. People had told her she was meat, less than animal, worth only the numbers on a scale. But this man said she was more. She wanted to believe, but her fear whispered louder. "What do you want from me?" she asked again, her voice sharper now. "Nothing," he answered without hesitation. "Nothing?" she repeated, as if the word itself was a lie. He nodded, eyes still fixed on the road. "I want you to live." The words struck her like a blow. Not cruel, but heavy, impossible to carry. Live. How could she live when her whole life had been cages, chains, and fear? She turned her face away, staring at the small window. Outside, alien skies stretched dark and endless, filled with stars she had never been free to touch. Her heart raced, with questions she did not dare ask. Was this man insane, or did he see something in her that even she could not see? He drove on, and the silence between them grew thick. At last, he spoke again, as if answering her thoughts. "I know what they think of me," he said slowly. "They laugh, they call me foolish, but I could not watch you die like that." There was a pain in his voice, a shadow that belonged to his own past. The girl turned her head slightly, curiosity, battling fear. She saw his face more clearly now, tired eyes, lines of sorrow, the kind of loneliness that carves deep into the soul. He was not young, not old, but worn by life. In his silence, she sensed a story, one he had not told yet, perhaps one he never planned to tell. The transport shook slightly as it moved across rough ground. She clutched her chains, the metal biting her skin. The man noticed and reached for a small device. With a soft click, the locks opened and the chains fell away. She froze, staring at her bare wrists. For the first time in years, the weight was gone. Her skin was red where the cuffs had dug deep, but the pain felt strange, almost unreal. "Why?" she whispered again, her voice trembling. The human's answer was simple. "Because you are not mine to chain." Tears burned her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She did not trust him enough for that. Not yet. Still, something inside her shifted, a crack in the wall she had built to survive. He gave her a small flask of water. She stared at it, suspicious, before drinking. The cool taste filled her mouth, and for a moment she remembered what it was like to feel human. The journey stretched on, and with it came questions she did not ask aloud. Why did he save her when no one else cared? Why risk being mocked, hated, maybe even hunted? What was he hiding behind that steady voice and lonely eyes? Her mind spun with fear and doubt, yet a dangerous seed of hope began to take root as the night deepened. The human slowed the transport, stopping on a quiet ridge overlooking the valley. The stars glimmered above, silent witnesses to their strange meeting. He stepped out, breathing the cold air, and she followed slowly, still clutching her arms as if chains remained. He looked up at the sky and said softly, almost to himself, "I once had a family." The girl froze, unsure if she was meant to. "Here. They're gone now," he continued, his voice breaking for just a moment. "That is why I couldn't leave you there. I know what it is to lose everything." She stared at him, her heart pounding with something she could not name. In that moment, he was no longer just the man who had bought her. He was something else, something broken yet strangely whole. For the first time, she felt that maybe his words were true. Maybe he did not want anything from her. Maybe he simply wanted her to live. Yet even as the thought warmed her chest, another darker thought crept in. If the world discovered what he had done, if the traders or guards came looking, would he regret saving her? Would he throw her back to the cages to protect himself, or would he fight for her, even when the whole world turned against them? The girl did not know the answer, but she knew one thing. Her life no longer belonged to the weight of a scale. It now balanced on the choice of a lonely human, and that choice could either save her or destroy them both. The transport rumbled along the lonely road, its small lights cutting through the dark valley. The girl sat in silence, her thin frame pressed against the cold seat, her eyes fixed on the window. She watched shadows pass by, tall trees, broken rocks, and the endless stars above. Her heart pounded with every sound, every bump, every moment of silence that stretched too long. She was free from the cages, yet chains still lived inside her mind. Beside her, the human drove with quiet focus, his hands steady, his face calm but unreadable. The world outside was unknown to her, and so was the man who now carried her fate. She wanted to ask him again, why? Why would he do this? Why risk everything? For her, but fear gripped her tongue. The fear that if she spoke too much he might change his mind, so she stayed quiet, listening only to the hum of the engine. The silence felt heavy, until he broke it. "You don't need to be afraid," he said gently. His voice was steady, yet there was a softness in it. She turned her head toward him, her eyes narrowing. Afraid was all she knew. How could she not be afraid? She wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. The human noticed her doubt, but he did not push. Instead, he reached into a small bag beside him and pulled out food. He placed it on the seat between them, bread and dried fruit. She stared at it, her stomach twisting with hunger. Her lips parted, but suspicion filled her eyes. "What is this?" she asked softly. "Food," he answered simply. "For you." Her hands trembled as she reached for it. Every bite felt strange, unreal. She had eaten scraps all her life, and now real food sat heavy in her hands. She chewed slowly, as if the taste itself might vanish. The human said nothing, only watched the road ahead. Hours passed and the road grew quieter. The stars seemed to shine brighter in the deep night sky. The girl leaned back, exhaustion pulling her eyelids down, yet she fought sleep, too afraid to rest. What if he left her in the wilderness? What if this was a cruel trick? Still, her body betrayed her, drifting into dreams filled with cages and fire. She woke suddenly to a soft weight over her shoulders. The human had placed his cloak on her, warmth wrapped around her, and she froze. No one had ever given her warmth, not without cost. She looked at him in shock, but he only whispered, "Rest. You're safe now." The words burned in her chest. Safe. She repeated the word silently. It was a word she had never believed in. Could she believe it now? Her eyes, studied his face, lit faintly by the dashboard light. He looked tired, not cruel. Loneliness seemed to cling to him, the same way fear clung to her. She wondered what he had lost, what pain he carried. But she did not ask, not yet, as dawn approached. The horizon turned pale with light. The transport slowed as they reached the edge of a small settlement. The houses were quiet, scattered, and old. Unlike the busy alien city, this place looked forgotten by the world. The human parked the transport beside a small home built of stone and wood. He stepped out and opened the door for her. She hesitated, her legs shaking, her body heavy with fear. Still, she followed him, because there was nowhere else to go. Every step toward the house felt unreal, as if she were walking into a dream. She was not allowed to have inside. The house was simple but warm. Wooden walls, a small fire crackling, shelves filled with books and tools. It smelled of earth and smoke, not of blood or chains. He set down his bag and looked at her. "You can sit," he said, pointing to a chair. She sat slowly, her hands clutching the cloak still wrapped around her shoulders. He moved about the house with ease, pouring water, preparing more food. It was strange to watch him, strange to be in a place that did not feel like a prison. Her eyes darted to the door, the windows, every escape, every shadow. But no guards came, no auctioneer, no cruel laughter, only silence, broken by the crackle of fire. She spoke at last, her voice low but sharp. "What do you really want from me?" The human stopped, turning toward her. His eyes met hers, steady and calm. "Nothing," he said again. The word cut her like a blade. Nothing, always nothing. How could it be true? How could someone want nothing? Tears threatened to rise, but she forced them down. "No one saves without reason," she whispered. He stepped closer, kneeling slightly so their eyes met. "I had a daughter," he said, his voice breaking. "She's gone now, but when I saw you in that cage, I couldn't leave you there. I couldn't watch it happen again." Her breath caught, her heart thundering. She saw it now, the sorrow in his eyes, the weight he carried, not pity, not cruelty, but grief. For the first time she believed him. Not fully, but enough to let a small crack of hope slip through her fear. The firelight flickered across their faces, shadows dancing on the walls. She clutched the cloak tighter, whispering words she had not dared to say in years. "Thank you." The human said nothing, only nodded, but in that silence something fragile was born, something that might grow into trust or break into betrayal. Neither of them knew what the future would bring. Yet in that quiet house, after years of chains, the girl felt the first touch of freedom. Not complete, not safe, not certain, but real. And that was enough to keep her awake through the long night, wondering who this man was and what fate awaited them both. The fire burned low in the small house, throwing soft light across the room. The girl sat on the edge of the chair, her hand still clutching the cloak he had given her. It felt strange against her skin, soft, warm, almost too kind. She kept waiting for the moment when his kindness would end, when the mask would fall, but hours passed and nothing cruel happened. The human moved about the room with quiet steps, setting things in order, making food, tending the fire. He did not speak much, only glanced at her now and then, as if making sure she was still there. That watchfulness made her uneasy, but not in the way of guards or buyers. It felt more like care, and that unsettled her even more. When he placed a bowl of hot soup in front of her, she stared at it suspiciously. Steam rose gently, carrying a smell she had not known in years. Her stomach clenched in hunger, but her mind whispered warnings. She looked at him sharply, her voice almost a hiss. "What trick is this?" The man sat across the table, his tired eyes calm. "No trick," he said. "Eat, it will help you heal." She hesitated, waiting, watching, but when nothing else happened, she lifted the spoon with trembling hands. The first taste burned her tongue, but it was real, rich, filled with warmth she had forgotten. Her throat tightened as she swallowed, the food almost painful because of what it meant. Tears threatened to rise, but she forced them down, unwilling to let him see weakness. After she finished, silence stretched between them. The human leaned back in his chair, studying the fire. "You don't need to thank me," he said quietly. "Not yet, not ever, if you don't want to." His words confused her. Most buyers demanded gratitude, demanded loyalty, demanded everything, but he asked for nothing. Her suspicion deepened even as her heart wanted to believe. That night he gave her a blanket and pointed toward a small room. "You can sleep there," he said. "No one will hurt you here." She stepped into the room slowly, her body stiff, her eyes searching every corner for chains. There were none. Only a simple bed and a small window. She sat down, the blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. She told herself she would not sleep. She would stay awake, ready to run. But exhaustion betrayed her, and soon her eyes closed in the middle of the night. She woke suddenly. A sound drifted through the thin walls, low, broken, almost like a whisper. She crept closer to the doorway and listened. The human was speaking in his sleep, his voice raw, calling a name she did not know. "Lena, Lena, I'm sorry." The words cut through the silence, heavy with grief. The girl froze, her heart beating fast. Who was Lena? Why did he speak her name with such pain? She wondered if Lena was his daughter, the one he had mentioned, or maybe another woman, someone he had loved and lost. A strange fear crept into her chest, fear that she was only a shadow, a replacement for someone gone. She lay awake the rest of the night, her mind filled with questions she dared not ask. By morning, the human looked more tired than before, but he said nothing of his dreams. He simply offered her more food, more water, and a chance to step outside. The sun was bright, the air crisp, and for the first time in years, she felt the warmth of light without bars above her. It made her dizzy, almost unreal. She stepped carefully. As if the ground itself might vanish, he watched her, not with control, but with quiet patience. When she stumbled, he reached to steady her, and she pulled back quickly. Her body remembered too much pain, too many tricks. But his hand dropped away without anger, only sadness. "You don't have to trust me now," he said softly, "but I'll wait until you do." His words echoed in her mind as she walked the small yard. Wait. No one had ever waited for her. No one had given her choice. Her whole life had been cages and commands. And now here was a man who asked for nothing. It terrified her more than chains because freedom felt like a trap she could not understand. Days passed slowly, and with each one the fear in her chest loosened just a little. He never shouted, never raised a hand, never demanded. Instead, he showed her small things: how to light the fire, how to carry water, how to read simple words from his books. At first she resisted, silent and cold. But one evening, when he stumbled while lifting wood, she found herself moving without thought. She took some of the weight from him, their hands brushing for the first time without fear. He looked at her, surprise in his eyes, and for the first time she did not look away. Something shifted in that moment, a fragile thread tying them together. Still, every night she heard him whisper that same name in his sleep, Lena. And every night her chest tightened with questions she dared not speak. Was she a ghost of someone else? A shadow filling an empty space in his broken heart? Or was she something new? Something real she did not know? And the not knowing gnawed at her. But as she lay in the small bed, wrapped in warmth she never thought she'd have, one truth became clear. For the first time, she was not meat, not a number on a scale. She was someone who could eat, rest, and breathe without fear. And though her mistrust lingered, though the past whispered loudly, a seed of something dangerous had begun to grow inside her. Hope. The days turned into a slow rhythm inside the quiet house. Morning light filled the small rooms, and the girl woke to the smell of bread or the crackle of fire. At first she kept her distance, speaking little, her eyes always sharp with suspicion. But slowly tiny changes began to show. She no longer refused the food he gave. She no longer sat frozen in silence all day. Her steps grew steadier, her voice less sharp. The human did not push. He simply stayed patient, as if waiting for a storm to pass. One evening, he brought out a book, its pages worn, the letters simple. He sat at the table and placed it before her. "Do you know these words?" he asked, his tone gentle. She frowned, shaking her head. Reading was never for slaves, never for meat. He began tracing the letters with his finger, sounding them out slowly. At first she only watched, her arms folded. But the next day, when he opened the book again, curiosity pulled her closer. She repeated the sounds after him, clumsy at first, then clearer. A spark of something strange flickered in her chest. Learning, something she had never been allowed to do. For the first time, her mind was not just surviving, it was reaching. When she managed to read a full word, he smiled, a real, warm smile. She froze, unused to such an expression, then looked away quickly, but deep inside the warmth stayed. Another day, he took her to the small garden outside. The soil was dark, the plants green, reaching toward the sun. He knelt beside her, showing how to press the seeds into the dirt, how to cover them with care. She copied his movements, her hands trembling but steady. Her life had always been destruction, not creation. Now she placed something in the earth and wondered if it would grow. When she asked, her voice uncertain, he answered simply, "Yes, with time." That word struck her. Time. No one had ever spoken of her future before, not as if she had one. As the bond grew, laughter began to slip into their days. It was awkward at first, soft and unsure. She laughed when he slipped on wet grass. He laughed when she stumbled over words. The sound felt strange to her, almost dangerous. But each time, it loosened the chains still wrapped around her heart. She began to notice small things, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, the way his voice lowered when she seemed afraid. She began to feel less like a shadow, more like a person. Yet in the quiet moments, darkness still lingered. At night she heard him whisper that name, Lena. Each time the word twisted inside her chest. Was she just filling an empty space left behind? Was she only alive because she reminded him of someone gone? She wanted to ask, but fear kept her silent. If his kindness was built on memory, what would happen when he realized she was not Lena? One evening, as the firelight danced across the room, she finally spoke. "You lost your family," she said softly, not a question but a truth. The human froze, his eyes shadowed. "Yes," he whispered. "Long ago." Silence hung between them, heavy with pain. He looked at her then, his voice breaking. "When I saw you in that cage, I saw them again. I saw what I could not protect, and I could not let it happen again." Her chest ached with his words. For the first time she reached out, her hand trembling, her fingers brushed his, a simple touch, fragile as glass. He did not move, did not pull away. In that small moment, they were no longer captor and rescued, not stranger and outcast. They were simply two broken souls finding warmth in each other's silence. But outside their small world, danger stirred. The traders in the marketplace had not forgotten. Whispers spread quickly, rumors of a human who paid a fortune not to eat his purchase, but to keep it alive. Mockery turned to suspicion, suspicion to anger. Some saw profit lost, others saw insult, and word traveled to places where such defiance would not be ignored. Inside the house, the girl felt the weight of unseen eyes. Each time she stepped outside, she imagined watchers in the trees. She told him one night, her voice low with fear, "They will come for me." He looked at her, steady but firm. "They will have to go through me first." Her breath caught, not in fear, but in something she could not name. Why would he risk so much for her? Why not cast her away to save himself? She did not understand, but she believed him. For the first time, she believed someone would fight for her. As the fire burned low, they sat in silence, the bond between them stronger now. Yet danger pressed closer, shadows gathering beyond the hills. The girl lay awake in her bed, clutching the cloak he had given her. Her heart pounded with fear, but also with something new. She whispered into the darkness, words she never thought she'd say. "I don't want to lose this." And in that moment, she realized The human had given her more than food, more than freedom. He had given her something far more dangerous, hope strong enough to make her afraid of losing it. The quiet days did not last. The girl began to notice changes first. The way shadows lingered near the road, the way strangers seemed to ask too many questions. The human noticed, too, though he tried to hide it, his eyes sharper each time he went into the settlement, his hand never far from the tool at his belt. Rumors had traveled faster than either of them expected. The marketplace traders were not laughing anymore. They were angry. A human had broken the unspoken rule. He had bought meat and refused to eat it. Such defiance could not be ignored. Not in a world where cruelty was law. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned red, the human returned from the settlement with tension written across his face. He set down his bag quietly, but the girl saw the weight in his eyes. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. He hesitated before answering. "They know, they are watching. Some of them are coming." Her breath caught, fear flooding her chest. "Then send me back," she whispered. "If they find me here, they will hurt you too." His eyes hardened, his voice sharp with resolve. "No, I will not send you back. I chose this. I chose you." Her heart twisted at his words, heavy with both fear and hope. She did not understand why he risked so much, why he would put himself in danger for someone like her, but his voice carried no doubt, no hesitation. For him, the choice was already made. That night the house felt smaller, the silence heavier. Every creak of wood, every rustle of wind made her jump. She sat by the fire, her hands clutching the cloak he had given her. He sharpened a blade quietly, his eyes never leaving the door. The sound of metal against stone echoed through the room, steady, relentless. It reminded her of chains, but this time the sound was not against her. It was for her. The thought both comforted and terrified her. In the darkness she spoke, her voice low. "Because of me, you are in danger." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I was in danger the moment I decided to walk into that marketplace," he said, "but I would make the same choice again." Her throat tightened, her eyes stung. She had been treated as worthless her whole life, and now someone was willing to fight for her. The weight of that truth was almost too heavy to carry. Days passed and the tension grew. Strangers began appearing near the house, their eyes lingering too long, their words too sharp. The human warned them off, but he knew it was only a matter of time before talk turned to action. One morning, the girl woke to find marks near the edge of the garden, footprints that did not belong. Her heart pounded as she ran inside. "They were here," she whispered, her voice breaking. The human nodded grimly. "They will come again." That night they barred the windows, locked the doors, and kept the fire low. The house felt like a fortress, yet also like a trap. She sat close to him, fear in her eyes. "What if they take me?" she asked, her voice shaking. He turned to her, his hand brushing hers for the first time with certainty. "Then they will take me first," he said firmly. Her breath caught, her chest aching at the weight of his promise. The world outside seemed to close in tighter each day. The girl began to dream of cages again, chains clamping her wrists, voices mocking her as she was dragged away. She woke in the night shaking, her body trembling. The human was there, his voice calm, his hand steady on her shoulder. "You're safe," he whispered. "As long as I'm here, you're safe." But deep down, she wondered how long he could keep that promise. The bond between them grew stronger under the shadow of danger. She no longer pulled away from his touch. She no longer doubted his words so quickly. Fear was still there, but so was something else, something stronger. When he looked at her, she saw not pity, not ownership, but something she had never seen before. Respect. Yet the danger outside did not fade, it only thickened. One afternoon, as they worked in the garden, a stone came crashing through the window. The girl screamed, falling to the ground. The human rushed inside, his face hard with fury. Voices echoed from the trees, laughter mixed. "With threats." "They know," he said, his voice grim. They are testing us. Her body shook, fear flooding her veins. She grabbed his arm, her eyes wide. Leave me, please. If you send me away, they will stop. His jaw tightened, his eyes fierce. No, he said again, louder this time. I will never give you back. The night that followed was filled with silence heavy as stone. The girl lay awake, clutching the cloak, staring at the flickering fire. She knew the storm was coming, and it would not stop until it reached their door. She whispered into the darkness. Why me? Why would you risk all this for me? From the other side of the fire, his voice answered, steady and calm. Because I see you, not as weight, not as meat, not as chains. I see you as life, and I will not let them take that away. Tears slipped down her cheeks, hot and silent. For the first time, she believed him fully. Without question, he would fight, no matter the cost. But as the fire burned low and the night deepened, one truth remained. The threat had returned, and it would not stop until it reached them both. The night of silence ended with footsteps, dozens of them, heavy and angry, breaking the stillness of the valley. The girl sat frozen by the fire, her hands gripping the cloak tight against her chest. Her heart pounded as shadows moved outside the windows. Whispers grew into shouts, laughter into threats. They had come, the traitors, the buyers, the ones who had lost their profit, and now they wanted her back. The human rose slowly from his chair, his face calm but his eyes sharp as steel. He took his blade in one hand, not as a weapon to strike first, but as a promise to protect. Stay behind me, he said, his voice low. Her throat tightened, her body shaking. You can't fight them all, she whispered. He looked at her, steady and certain. I don't need to win. I only need to stand. The door shook under the weight of fists, wood splintering, voices shouting. Give her back, human. She belongs to us. She is meat, not family. The girl flinched with every word, as if chains were already on her wrists. She wanted to run, to hide, to vanish, but his presence held her still. When the door finally burst open, the mob poured inside, their eyes burning with greed and fury. The human stepped forward, placing himself between them and her. He raised no weapon, only his voice. She is not yours, he said, each word heavy. She is not meat, not weight, not property. She is life. The crowd laughed, cruel and mocking. Life. She was weighed and sold like cattle. She is nothing. She is food. But the human did not move, did not falter. His body stood as a wall, his voice rising louder. No, she is someone. She breathes, she feels, she suffers, she dreams. If you see her as less, then it is you who are blind, not her who is worthless. The mob hesitated, his words striking deeper than they expected. Some sneered, some shouted, but others fell silent. The girl standing behind him felt her chest burn with a pain she did not understand. No one had ever spoken for her. No one had ever called her life. Her legs shook as she stepped forward, her hand clutching his arm. Her voice trembled, but she forced the words out. I was bought as meat, but he gave me a home. The crowd's laughter faltered, a ripple of unease spreading. Her eyes glistened with tears, her voice breaking but strong. You chained me. You mocked me. You tried to erase me. But he saw me. He saved me. He gave me back my name. Even when I had none. Silence stretched heavy in the room, broken only by the crackle of fire. Some of the mob looked away, unable to meet her gaze. Others still clung to their cruelty, shouting, She belongs to us. She is ours. The human's voice thundered again, fierce and unyielding. No, she belongs to no one, not me, not you, no one. She belongs to herself. The words hung in the air like a blade, sharp and final. The girl's breath caught, her heart pounding so loud it drowned the shouts. She looked at him, truly looked, and for the first time she understood. He had not saved her to replace someone lost, not to fill his own emptiness. He had saved her because he believed she deserved to live, and now he was willing to stand against the world to protect that truth. The mob shifted uneasily, their anger weakening under the weight of his defiance. Some spat at the ground, muttering, unwilling to fight a man who did not fear them. Others turned away, their courage gone. Only a few remained, their hands gripping blades, their eyes burning with hatred. But even they hesitated, for something in his stance, in his voice, in the fire in his eyes told them they would not win. Not tonight. One by one they began to leave, their shouts fading into the night. The last lingered in the doorway, spitting, the final words, "This isn't over, human. You cannot change the world with one slave." The human's reply was steady, cutting through the night. "She is not a slave, she is free, and that is enough to begin change." The door closed, silence falling heavy once more. The girl's legs gave way and she sank to the floor, her chest heaving. Tears streamed down her face, not of fear, but of release. The human knelt beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "It's over," he whispered, though both of them knew the fight was only beginning. She looked at him through her tears, her voice breaking. "You stood for me when no one else ever did. You gave me hope when I thought I was nothing. Why would you do this?" His eyes softened, sorrow and strength blending in them. "Because I lost everything once, and I will not watch someone else lose themselves too." Her trembling hand reached for his, holding it tightly. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Not because danger was gone, but because someone chose her. Her voice was a whisper, fragile but true. "You gave me a home." The fire crackled, the night deepened, and the stars above watched in silence. The world outside would not forget. Enemies would still come. Danger would still follow. But in that small house, two broken souls had found something stronger than fear. They had found trust. They had found hope. They had found the beginning of a family. And though the future remained uncertain, one truth echoed in her heart. She was no longer meat weighed by the kilo. She was no longer property sold for credits. She was alive. She was seen. She was home.